You know, maybe some of you know me, maybe some of you don't know me. So let me give a quick introduction. Take off my glasses. My name is Jay Adams. I'm from America, New York. Um, I've been living in China for almost 9 years. I've lived in the Netherlands for almost 10 years. I'm from upstate New York. Grew up poor, blue collar, single parent. Um, the reason why I'm in China, because originally my company brought me here, but since then I've done business for myself and trade and selling. Owned a restaurant, and China is very capitalistic, and so I'm doing this video to tell you the importance of the 2020 election. There's a lot of rhetoric out there. There's a lot of hyperbole, and if you're a Trump supporter, you're probably not going to like this video. But I'm going to be very honest with you. The importance of this election is more than you could perhaps imagine. I have never saw so much division and discord towards people, politics, immigration, to almost everything in America. Either you with us or you're not with us. And it almost seems from the outside looking in that the American democracy or the democratic system that we love so dearly is crumbling in front of our eyes. And the current president, I always call him shitbag Trump. I've never been a supporter of Trump. And let me make something very clear. Trump as an entertainer is awesome. I liked him. I liked him as the apprentice. To be honest, I've never watched so much news because I'm always entertained what's going to come, farting or throwing up out of his mouth, but it's still entertaining TV. But, if you really listen to him, he's not really saying anything new. He's only repeating talking points like build the wall, immigrations, all these nutty things. And I mean, and from, we're going to have the best healthcare, the best everything, if you elect me, we're going to get done. We're going to win. It's a lot of garbage. I mean, anybody who does just literally 15 minutes of research on the internet would be able to know the reality of his basic bullshit. It's good bullshit. It's entertaining bullshit. I mean, I just watched, he did a rally and he was making fun of Michael Bloomberg and his height. And as he was going down in front of the podium, it was funny. Yeah, I laughed. So anyway, so I want to talk about a few points here. So, and I have two screens here, and you can see I got the Chinese flag and I got the American flag. Like it or not, they're like brother to brother, sister to sister. I mean, they're in bed together, regardless of the rhetoric you see on TV. One needs each other. So, it's important to realize that. But the one thing I really want to talk about, and it's going to be about the American election, which is very important. Just a very little bit about Bernie Sanders, being the Democratic nominee. Joe Biden, of course, he's more of the establishment. He's the guy who reminds us of Obama, which a lot of people loved Obama in America. You may not agree with some of his politics. I certainly didn't. But did he represent the American office, or excuse me, the American presidency, honorably? Absolutely. He was a very devout family man, a religious man. And I'm an atheist, but I respect that he had a commitment to his beliefs and how he conducted his life within the office and now outside of the office. And so, anyways, I'm going to talk about healthcare, education, student loans, this whole socialism and handout, and tax relief for the top, 1 to 5% in America. The black vote, which I could talk a lot about that because it seems for whatever reason, it is stuck in the mind of white politicians that you got to go to the black church to talk to black people. But I would, and I'm going to talk about this just a little bit, I would rather see a white politician go to a successfully owned black business and talk to the business about progression and moving forward in the American economy. I mean, okay, yeah, during Jim Crow and Reconstruction and slavery, black slaves or black people have a historical relationship with the black church, but that's archaic. It's time has changed. I want to see, more about the modern people of color, persons of color, in their businesses or whatever successful endeavors or groups. I'm more inclined to see that. I don't want to see a preacher jump up and down in the hallelujah. I want to see something that, that everybody can relate to, because I can tell you right now, white America cannot relate to black churches. Let's be honest. But white America can relate to seeing a black doctor, man or woman, who might have a clinic, who is doing very well, and that resonates. That identifies. You can identify with that more easily, or than, again, a black pastor or whatever they call themselves, bishops, jumping around, hooping and hollering. The other thing I want to talk about is small business loans and the access to wealth in America. These are one of the things I was very disappointed about with Obama. Somebody says, well, was, Obama presidency more people of color friendly, or was it the gay community friendly? Most people know that answer. The other thing is reparations versus Native Americans. And this is something that, it's very sensitive, but you really have to ask yourself, they got land, they were, entitled certain rights, though I don't believe the Constitution mentioned them. We definitely know, it wasn't until the 13th Amendment that, black people were technically recognized more than just cattle or possessions. And the other thing is the Trump effect that it had on American relationships. And what I mean by that is relations in America better now that Trump is the president, domestically or globally. And let's be honest. I mean, the media is the media, but there's enough information or social media out there that if you really want to understand the dynamics of the news and what people are saying, there's a lot of information out there, fake and real information. But again, you have to take a look at the news, like Fox, which I do watch. I watch MSNBC. I watch CNN. I read the Wall Street Journal. I like the Washington Post. I even look at Breitbart sometimes. I want to see perspectives. I'm a lot on Reddit and taking a look at some of those posts. So anyway, so let me just start by saying that this American election is very important. And I'm very disappointed that everybody who looks at Bernie Sanders says, oh, socialism, oh, it's a handout, it's a handout, it's a handout. Well, I lived in a socialist society. I live in a communist society now. So let me just give you some perspective. Is China, how should I say, do they bear down on freedoms and certain liberties? Absolutely. In this society, they want harmony. They want peace. They want you to focus on your family first, your job second, and third, just be happy. And that's how it works in this society. Is there anything wrong with focusing on your family? No. I mean, that is the backbone of most people's belief, and it defines who they are. So, when it comes to work in China, they look at it as a blessing. You should feel blessed that you have a job. You should be happy to wake up every morning to have a job. And I think if you're a capitalist, you can definitely identify with that, because you're working for what you want in life, in your society. You're not taking. And then, to be happy and joyful. Well, I disagree with them, because I do want to see the reality. Don't force feed me bullshit when you can give me something that good or bad to allow me to make my own decisions. China's not very good at that. But again, they're dealing with 1.3 billion people. And I would probably say, probably close to 80% of those people are not the most educated people. Trust me and believe it or not, there's a lot of people in China who are not very progressive. They're more stuck in the old ways, because, access to education is very limited here, believe it or not. You have to make and pass a national exam to be able to go to a university. And if at 16 you do not accomplish that goal, you're kind of delegated to doing, Walmart, McDonald's, security guard, certain remedial jobs. But in some cases, it also motivates people to be entrepreneurs and start their own business. And so, but yeah. but I like China. You know, there's some good points. There's some bad points. I've gotten chubbier since I moved to China. A lot of good food. And if anybody is a fan of Chinese delicacies or cuisines, they would agree that it is, yes, quite delicious. And I live in the south of China, in one of its largest, and actually the most modern, one of the most modern cities on earth. At least it's the fastest growing city on earth, or at least world history. I lived in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is and I'm going to go back to China when I get to healthcare. I lived in the Netherlands, which is a socialist society. It is. But in that society, I knew where my money was going. In that society, what you paid for in tax, you got back. And what that means is in America, you have what they call unemployment insurance. And it only lasts for so long. The Netherlands is based the same way. But with the with the unemployment insurance in the Netherlands, not only was I able to keep my health care, which I had to pay for because I made more money, but I also kept my pension. I kept my pension. And so they continue paying into that because I pay tax. I got something out of it. Another great thing I loved about the Netherlands, and I'll go into healthcare really quickly, is that I had to pay. I had to pay around 400, 500 euros. I made close to 70,000 euros a year, which is good money, which at the time came to close to six figures in America. But when I was sick, they would actually send a neighborhood doctor to my house to check on me. That's not bad. It's not bad. When it came to prescription drugs, believe it or not, if I was, say, like fat now and a diabetic, and I'm not a diabetic, they would talk to me a lot about wellness and trying to change your habits, rather than just giving you a pill to suppress some of these things. I mean, if your body is reacting to something that you ate and it gives you heartburn, well, that's telling you shouldn't be eating it or drinking it. But they really worked hard to resolve the problem, not let it linger. For example, I have allergies, and when I lived in America before going to the Netherlands, they did a lot of research to why, and they actually found the cause. And basically, it was Scotch. I'm allergic to that because of the distilling process. Heavy water because of the minerals, and certain toxins like cat dandruff, which was weird. Whereas in America, they just kept giving me pills. In the Netherlands, I changed my habits, so I mean, it was different. The dentist, I have 3 fake teeth. I have a bridge here. I went to the Netherlands because in America, every year or every half a year, 2 years maybe, I had to go reseal it with cement. I've had this bridge in my mouth since I was 16. So yeah, I go to the Netherlands and I said, well, when do I have to come back? And though that's not covered under the medical coverage, you have to pay for that because they consider this cosmetic. They said, well, be in your mouth until the day you die. And I said, wait. America has the best of the best. And you're telling me that this is not going to fall out. And they said, listen, it's not going to fall out. We're not here to profit off of you. Blew my mind. So the educational system over there, I'm not very familiar with, but I know it's not as expensive as it is in America, because as in America, there's too much, education for profit. And here's a weird thing too, by the way, because I've interacted a lot, and I know I'm jumping around, but I'll get back to certain things here. I've been around this world, and I've hired people from around this world. And the whole anomaly about the student loan, why did you drop out of university? Or, why is it that you're paying so much money? Why can't you live on, $50,000? And when you say that, because I have to pay my student loans, it just blows people's minds. How does that make sense? And, America's greedy. I mean, it's greedy. It's greedy. And it's cutthroat. I mean, But anyway, so I don't really, but again, I don't know a lot about the Dutch educational system. But let me, since we're on education, I do agree with Bernie Sanders 100% that state and in local colleges and universities that you technically do pay tax for, you should be allowed to at least get your bachelor's. Anything like above that, like a master's or a professional degree or PhD, then you have to pay for that. I think by, giving people opportunity to education, unless you use a state like West Virginia, which is a coal mining state, right? Well, they are coal miners because there's really no other opportunities there. Let's be realistic. And obviously a lot of manufacturing, a lot of blue collar jobs with your hands. We're not talking about trades, but we're talking about, we work as a construction, a demolitionist or whatever. You don't have access to education. And obviously if a state like West Virginia had access to at least, say, a junior college to get an associate, so they could be a state trooper, they could be a nurse, or whatever other field that would require, some sort of higher education to get that job, we give them more opportunities. And that makes sense. That makes sense because they're already paying taxes for this. You follow me on this one. But since, everybody's so greedy and always chasing that dollar and not looking for, the common good for everyone, is a huge problem in America. It's a huge problem. And, when Bernie Sanders said, hey, listen, China took millions, hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, excuse me. I did it, Donald Trump. Well, you have to give something to get something out of society. Makes sense, right? But let's go back to this whole, tuition free thing. The only way, and I watched the Donald Trump's rallies, and they're entertaining. I like the guy as an actor, but scares me shitless as the president. But I'm watching a lot of these people with their John Deere hat, or listening to these farmers who are, being affected by this trade and our truck. I mean, there's so many blue collar people in his rallies, but it amazes me where they can't put in their minds that the only way to give them opportunities, or at least options, is through higher education. And think about this: if you're paying in your tax dollars to sustain these, community colleges and state colleges, you should have some sort of, and don't give me this, well, that's socialism and you got to, bootstrap this and bootstrap that. Listen, for people who say that, fuck you. Because America is not a fair society. Let's be honest, okay? It's not a fair society. There are some instances where, yes, that has worked. And even if you are rich, you still got to do the bootstrap thing, and white or black, and let's be honest, if you're white, you start basically at, say, if it's a 400-meter track, you start at the 200-meter track, at the 200-meter marker. And if you're a person of color, especially black, you start basically at the starting line. That's just a reality. But anyhow, to be able to fix a lot of these problems, education should be free. The other part here I want to jump on is Elizabeth Warren. I do love that student loans should be forgiven. If it takes, say, 60,000 or above to get a bachelor's, and this is state universities, and knowing that some of these degrees only pay X amount per year, and they calculate how long it would take to be able to repay that loan. And for example, let's say if they live in San Francisco, so they kind of do the math on that. And if they realize that this person is going to be in debt for the next 25 to 30 years because of, cost of living, expenses and so on, something has to be managed. I mean, it's a bullshit system. It's a bullshit system. And it's a bullshit system because if we can provide socialism by bailing out all these companies and giving all these CEOs $1 million parachutes, and it did happen under Obama, but this tax break that Donald Trump gave to the top 1% to 5%, I mean, that's kind of like socialism, right? When, you know, Amazon doesn't have to pay any, you know, taxes off the billions of dollars they've made. I don't know what the hell that's called. That can't be capitalism, you know? So anyhow, um, so that's with the whole American thing. I don't see that issue in China. I don't see that issue in Europe mainly. And this whole notion about, well, if you don't like your healthcare, then, you know, you should go to Canada, you know, because a lot of Canadians come down to America because America's better. Yes, they do, because they have better facilities. They have better medical technology and different type of practices. Why wouldn't you? Okay, think about that. That's a lot of bullshit when you listen to that. So let me just jump right in. I just want to throw this out here very quickly, and I just want to read something here. There's three types of economic market. Obviously, the first one is capitalism, which is based on private ownership of the means of productions and on individual economic freedoms. Most of the means of production, such as factories and businesses, are owned by private individuals and not by the government, which is totally different in China. Like, you know, Tencent, Huawei, they're owned by the government. Private ownership makes decisions about what and when to produce and how much products it should cost. So basically, as you know, supply and demand. If people are willing to pay, say $1,000 for a phone that costs $100 to make, ta-da. Other characteristics of capitalism includes the freedom of competitions, the supply and demand, which I mentioned, and there's a lot of other things in there as well. And I really encourage people to read about capitalism. The one thing about capitalism is the nature of capitalism is if you take a look at its cycle, it always drops. It always goes into recession and it bounces back up, and it always goes down. It is very unstable. It's a very unstable economy. Obviously, communism, and this is more of Marxism. In some ways, I agree with it, and I'm just going to read these two paragraphs really quickly. Karl Marx, in the 19th century, was the father of communism. He was outraged by the growing gap between the rich and the poor. Think about that. The gap between the rich and the poor. He saw capitalism as an outmoded economic system that exploited workers, which would eventually rise against the rich because the poor were so unfairly treated. Think about that. In a capitalist society, what is the number one thing that all middle class people complain about? The rich is getting rich and we're getting, fucking poor. Think about that. Think about that. And so Marxists thought that the economic system of communism would replace capitalism, which capitalism is based on principles meant to correct the problems caused by capitalism. Think about that. The most important principle of communism is that no private ownership of property, which I don't agree with. People should have the right to lay out their destiny and to make money as they see, legally fit. But ownership of property shall not be allowed. Marx believed that private ownership encouraged greed and motivated people to knock out the competition, no matter what the consequences. Let's take a look at fossil fuels compared to green technology. Does that ring a bell? Ding, 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 ding. It better fucking ring a bell. It better ring a bell. Because we're killing this planet. And I'm not even going to get into that in this video here. Property should be shared, and the people should ultimately control the economy. The government should exercise the control in the name of the people, at least in the transition between capitalism and communism. So basically what they're saying is there needs to be a balance between the two. The goals are to eliminate the gap between the rich and the poor and to bring about economic equality. That's Marxism. Hold on a second while I blow your fucking mind. Many people don't know that. It's all on the internet. It's not hyperbole. And lastly, socialism, which everybody goes, ooh, socialism. Ooh. Do you pay for public schools? Yes. Is the Catholic churches in your neighborhood paid for by you? Probably yes. Is Medicare? Yes. Is Social Security? Yes. That's socialism. That's socialism. And I'm sure there's a whole long list of things that I'm having bringing up. But anyways, let me read this. Socialism, like capitalism, calls for the putting of the major means of production in the hands of the people, either directly or through the government. Huh. That kind of sounds like wage equality, right? Because if it's in the hands of the people and the government, well, that ensures that people will have as the economy grows, so doesn't their paycheck grow. It's only, boom, makes sense, right? Socialism also believes that wealth and income should be shared more equally among the people. Socialists differ from communists in that they do not believe that workers will overthrow capitalists suddenly and violently. So, basically, an uprising. In some ways, you have to give to get, right? If you want to function in government and you expect the people to pay taxes in that government, well, you have to give, you have to give and take somewhere. It's kind of more or less socialism. You don't. What is it? What is it? The whole saying, "Don't tread on my freedoms," or give me. There's a saying with the snake and stuff. I forgot that saying. It's kind of similar to that. Their main goal is to narrow, not totally eliminate the gap between the rich and the poor. The government that says has a responsibility to redistribute wealth to a society more fair and more just. Well, in America, when you give the top 1% tax fucking breaks and the middle class and the poor are not a goddamn thing, boy, it makes you think of, I love that capitalism. I love it. Makes me feel good. Makes me really, really good. Finally, there is no pure capitalist or communist economy in the world today. The capitalist United States has a social security system and a government-owned postal service. Yeah, that's one of the services of socialism, by the way. Communist China now allows its citizens to keep some of the profits they earn, which they do. You got to pay taxes, but I made money and I didn't have to give it all away. I have a lot of rich Chinese friends. They don't have to give it all away. They're driving around in, Rolls Royces, McLarens, Lamborghinis. Excuse me. So now that China allows its citizens to keep some of the profits they earn, these categories are the models designed to share greater light on the differences between the economic systems. So I encourage you to read about capitalism, Marxism, and socialism and get your shit together, because Donald Trump is not going to tell you the truth. And it's beyond me that why Bernie Sanders doesn't really elaborate, or AOC elaborate on some of these things. And guess what? I love the Green fucking Deal, because that's where it's going. That's where it's going. If you're in coal, you need to wake the fuck up. If you're in fossil fuels, you need to wake the fuck up. Okay? You got to wake up. Period. Reparations for Black people. If you promise 40 acres and a mule, because we all know in America, if you don't got land, you technically ain't worth shit. You don't have real wealth. I mean, unless you're, say, an entertainer. And the number one means to wealth in America is ownership of property. We all know that. We know that. Immigrants came over with 50 cents in their pocket. Remember the whole story, or be around or beginning and a little bit towards the end of the turn of the century. But they were given access. If you work hard, the American dream can, happen to you. There's one thing that people have to understand in America: you cannot remove the color of your skin. You are who you are. Period. You will look like who you look like. Period. Not asking for boohoo, handout, or anything like that. In most situations, that I think that all people should be allowed, based on where they fit in society, the same equal opportunities. In other words, if a immigrant who say, let's say from, say white country, let's say Ireland, and I know the Irish people had it rough because of the religious beliefs and because of the British Empire at a certain point. But to look at another white person, and I'm mixed black and white, by the way, but to be able to look at another white person and look at them as you see yourself, you can reflect upon what you see. It's kind of like a woman saying, to a man, you don't know what it's like to be a woman. You don't know what it's like that we got to go through. And men says, I don't. But when a woman talks to another woman, they can relate, right? It's like when a black man talks to another black man in America and talks about some of the struggles and some of the things that they have to overcome and how much harder they have to work. And they got to be careful about what they say and how they say or how they look at people. Remember all these phone calls to 911 about, barbecuing in the park, a black guy whose grandmother happened to be white driving, But if a black person tries to have this conversation, say with an immigrant who had the opportunity to wealth, to had the opportunity, basically just have the opportunities, it's you can't relate to that. I can't relate with an Irish person how they came here and struggled when they looked white. I mean, I understand religiously, but I don't understand that struggle. I can't. You can look at, if I was a white person, I can look at another white person and say, okay, you may not be from this country or from this religion or whatever, but because of your white, I can identify and I can understand that you could probably have a better chance of success than, say, a Native American, or say that, I hate the word Latino, and I definitely don't use the word African American. I don't know where the fuck that word came from. My passport doesn't say African American. Never been to Africa. Anyways, so I believe that there does need to be some type of reparation to allow at least black people access to wealth, either through bank reform, either through small businesses. And don't give me this whole minority business. Yeah, they get the contracts first or what. Give me a fucking break. We're talking about people who are in these poor communities who actually happen to be slightly intelligent. Jay-Z is a friggin' billionaire. But people like him, from where he began to where he got, that's like less than 0.00001% of the blacks in America. So don't even use that as an example. I'm just talking about if you go to the bank and you have a good idea and you're willing to work, your credit should be based on your performance. Think small, then expand. Very simple. And lastly, the Trump effect on relations, and I want to be a little bit more specific. The fact that he's on Fox News quite a bit, which he appeals to mainly older white demographic. I would have more respect for Trump if he went into, say, a more Latino community and gave a rally, or visited a black-owned business or a black church or a black community. Just do something that when you look in the audience, you see 99% white, and then you see a big stupid fucking sign that says blacks support Trump. And then he calls everything fake news, and he never tries to say, he always says they say and what I heard, and it's kind of like a talk show, which is fine for talk shows, not fine for the president. He looks like a buffoon. He looks like an idiot. He sounds like an idiot. He executes like an idiot. He's never been a manager. He's been an owner of a business. And besides some of his hotels, he has been a failed businessman. Okay, yes, he was given $300 million. And how can you fuck up $300 million? Well, this man, lost over $1 billion. That's a lot of money. That's fact. It's not hyperbole. It's not fake news. This is public record. And if his taxes were to be released, you would definitely see that he is incompetent. He's a delegator. He basically says, if you're willing to put your face in my ass, I'll give you opportunities, even though you're not qualified, but I'll still give you the opportunities and the benefit of the doubt. And by doing that, he's appealing to such a small audience that it's really hurting, relationships. And what I mean is, I've had a lot of friends when he became president, and now that he is no longer like running for president, and some of the stigma behind him and the excitement behind him is dampering, I lost a lot of good friends that I enjoyed having political conversations with, because I am a conservative, but I am a liberal. I do believe in socialism. I do believe in Marxism, and I do believe in capitalism, and I'm not a hypocrite. There's good in everything, in all ideas. Hence, the whole idea there should be more than two parties. That's what's killing America. But yeah, it's really ripping America apart. And then globally, the standing is, I deal with a lot of international people. Not one of them now. In the beginning, they said also the same thing. He's a businessman. He's going to help build the economy, and the world market's going to be better because of his ideas and his successes, which, again, that was all hyperbole, his successes. It's just going to make, put more money in our pocket. He's a fucking clown. He's a fucking clown. That's all he is. And it's sad. It's sad that, it's kind of like religion. Let's look at it this way. It's kind of like religion. You get these people on TV, these evangelists, oh, Jesus, 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 you got to give money so I can fly on my jet, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, and then they start crying. But you're so desperate for hope. You're so desperate for connection to something positive that you lose focus. You lose focus of reality. I'm not knocking religion, because, there's a lot of good in that community, and the people that participate in churches, and some of the activities are awesome. They change people's lives, and they should, because it's a positive movement, not to the extreme, but to a point of bringing your negative out of your life and replacing it with something which I don't believe in, but something like a spirit or a God or something to give you hope and positivity. Donald Trump does that to a lot of these simple people. I'm not going to, and some of them are degenerates, but they're simple in their way of thinking. I'm not saying they're lazy, but they're hardworking, but they're simple in their thinking. And when you hear such a good salesman saying the things that he does, and he's making you laugh and making you feel good and saying how great you are, he is buying you piss in a jar and telling you that it's peanut butter and fucking jelly. That's what he's doing. And you got to realize that. But anyways, if you watch this video to the entirety, it's around 40 minutes. I'm not angry. I love America. I've loved traveling the world and seeing different cultures and understanding them. I don't see things in one way. I'm very open to understanding all types of things, mostly in positive things. I don't want to see negative things, but positive things. And it gave me perspective. And being an older person, coming up poor, I can speak on church. I can speak on food stamps. I can speak on making good money. I can speak on a lot of different topics. And don't be surprised if you read a lot or some of my posts where I talk about how great living in Utah is among Mormons. Loved it. Some of the greatest people in the world in Utah. They think Mormonism is a little nutty, but no one has ever tried to sell me that. They sold me on just being a good neighbor. I just love being there. But if you found what I say to be positive, and I'm being real and I'm being honest, and I'm sure I left out a lot of details, but I don't want to get into details, just talk in general. I really hope that you can see the decline of America, and Americans are better than that. We're better than that. We're better than that. You're not a Trump nation. And if I had to pick between Bernie and Biden just to beat Trump, I would prefer Bernie a lot. But I'm going to vote Joe Biden, because you got to get that fucking lunatic shitbag out of the office. The office deserves 1,000% better than who it has in its office now. So anyways, if you like this video, If you don't like this video, this is my vlog, and I hope that I provided some perspective and perhaps a little bit of information. This is purely just a vlog, and I'm just giving my opinions. And in some areas, I could have been wrong with what I talked about. But if you took the time to listen to this, I really appreciate it, and I really hope that, you know, when it comes time to voting in 2020 in November, that you make the right choice. And Trump has clearly shown that he's incapable. Thank you, and let's go America, right?